It's a very warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new edition of Arab Affairs, our show bringing you all the latest news and events happening all around the Arab region. You're in the company of myself, Angie Meher, for this afternoon. I'll be joining you for our episode, and as usual, we begin straight away with a look at some of the news making the headlines. Of course, in today's edition, we'll be focusing on the latest news regarding the International Court of Justice and the recent decisions. Egypt has welcomed the International Court of Justice decision to take immediate measures to protect civilians in the Gaza Strip. Earlier, the United Nations top court said Israel must prevent genocidal acts in Gaza and facilitate the urgently needed humanitarian aid into the besieged territory, handing down rulings in a case that has drawn global attention. International Court of Justice, ICJ, also urged Israel to refrain from any possible genocidal acts as it presses its military operation in the Gaza Strip, but it stopped short of ordering a ceasefire. The court said Israel must take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by the Palestinians. At this stage, the court was not considering whether Israel is actually committing genocide in Gaza, a process that is to take several years. Related news, the Palestinian Ministry for Foreign Affairs and Expatriates said that the immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip was a civil and practical way to make Israel abide by the measures adopted by the International Court of Justice to protect civilians and secure their humanitarian needs. Palestinian Foreign Ministry added the continuation of this genocide war was an Israeli challenge to the court's decision, persistence on systematic destruction of the Gaza Strip, and a creation of polluted environment which was unsuitable for humans, especially with the targeting of hospitals and the sanitary drainage stations, in addition to the continuation of a policy of starvation as well as thirst. Still with related news, the European Union said it expected Israel and Hamas to fully comply with the rulings of the International Court of Justice. We now have more details in this report. The European Union said orders of the International Court of Justice are binding on the parties and they must comply with them. European Union expects their full, immediate and effective implementation. The reactions to the top UN court's ruling in the Israel-Gaza case was split along the lines of the war raging in the Palestinian territory. The International Court of Justice said Israel must prevent genocidal acts in Gaza and allow humanitarian aid into the besieged strip of land. Militants also seized about 250 hostages, and Israel says around 132 of them remain in Gaza, including the bodies of at least 28 dead captives. The U.S. reiterated its position that allegations Israel has committed genocide in Gaza are unfounded. Palestinian Foreign Minister said in a video statement that the ICJ order is an important reminder that no state is above the law, adding the ruling should serve as a wake-up call for Israel and actors who enabled its entrenched impunity. Meanwhile, the foreign ministers of several countries, including the Foreign Affairs Ministry of South Africa, which brought the case before the ICJ, said the ruling marks a decisive victory for the international rule of law and a significant milestone in the search for justice for the Palestinian people. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Kuwait also welcomed the ICJ's decision and called for the international community to hold Israel accountable for violations of international law. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Still with you and today's edition of Arab Affairs, and we're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest for this afternoon, Mr. Ramzy Khoury, our journalist and our guest. A very good afternoon to you, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Ramzy. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, the voice is very far away. Hello, Angie.
Hello, hello. How are you, sir? Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, Mr. Ramzy.
My pleasure.
Right. First and foremost, of course, today we're discussing the latest International Court of Justice ruling, and we've seen they have ordered Israel to take action to prevent acts of genocide as it wages its war against the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. However, it stopped short of calling for an immediate ceasefire. How do you see this ruling by the International Court of Justice, sir?
The ruling is excellent on many fronts,
Yes.
despite the fact that they did not call for an immediate ceasefire. However, they did call for an immediate seizure of operations that kill civilians,
Yes.
as well as seizure of destruction of homes, as well as full compliance with the law in terms of allowing all of the food, medicine, etc., to come into the Gaza Strip as needed. And these rulings cannot be implemented unless there is a ceasefire. So basically, if Israel is going to continue killing civilians, then it is going against the rulings of the International Court of Justice and stands responsible. If they continue blowing up buildings and homes of people like they have been, and they are continuing, by the way. I mean, they did not stop just after the ruling.
Yes.
Khan Yunis is still under siege. They are still bombing all over. They are trying to blow up all of the homes alongside the borders of Gaza and Israel, and therefore, at the end of the day, we don't expect Israel to comply with the ruling, and therefore we expect Israel to stand accountable to that.
Right. Well, let me ask you, before I get into the details of the ruling, how do you see the international community's response to this ruling? We've seen the European Union, as well as several other international organizations, saying they expect Israel and Hamas to fully comply with the rulings of the International Court of Justice. How do you see them welcoming the ruling of the ICJ?
Whether they welcome it or not, they need to comply with it. And this is the whole point. This is the first time that the Palestinian cause is being dealt with properly in international courts. And therefore it's a historic moment. Now, why is this so important? Because all of the countries that are enabling genocide will have to recalculate now. They can no longer continue to enable genocide. Because by international law,
yes,
if you enable genocide, if you whitewash genocide, if you support genocide in any manner, then you are a full partner in genocide. So these governments now are going to sit there and recalculate their position on the Palestinian-Israeli issue. They need to start worrying. If we supply Israel with arms, can this be used against us in the court of law in the future? If we continue hiding facts or spin doctoring facts, a great example of such a thing is to stand there and say Israel has the right to defend itself. Well, Israel is an occupying force by international law. Israel does not have a right to defend itself under international law if it's an occupying country. The people who have the right to defend themselves are the occupied.
yes,
And therefore, all of these spins that European countries in specific, and of course the government of the United States of America have been doing, can become a liability now. And therefore, what they are doing now is they are repositioning themselves in order to protect themselves from what might come in the future. So let us take this example. Let us say that the lawsuit that is going to go on in the next 3 to 4 years ends up with a verdict that Israel has committed genocide. It will not stop there. The minute that happens, then the court will start looking at the cases of all of the countries that have actually supported Israel in committing genocide. And all of these people become liable in front of the court.
Absolutely. Mr. Ramzy, as you said, the ruling has required Israel to prevent and punish any public incitements to commit genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. And in addition to what you said, preserve evidence related to any allegations of genocide there. So as you said, this is an ongoing, case, which, as you said, does not end just with this ruling. Now, we've seen the International Court of Justice saying that some of the acts and omissions alleged by South Africa to have been committed by Israel in Gaza appear to be capable of falling within the provisions of the Genocide Convention. Now, this Genocide Convention, could you tell us a bit more about it? It was enacted in the wake of the mass murders in the Nazi Holocaust, and it defines genocide as acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. How important do you see the wording by the judges in their verdicts?
Extremely important.
Yes.
Extremely important, because Israel now will be tried in front of the International Court of Justice until it is deemed innocent or guilty. It's extremely important. But what is much more important than this, Angie,
yes,
is look at what you said. Why was this court created? It was created in order to stop genocide.
Yes.
Never again for everyone. But if you look at after the Holocaust, it was the Nazis committing genocide against the Jews. Today, it is the Zionists committing genocide against the Palestinians. And this is a term of events in history that is extremely important.
yes,
Why? Because Israel has always enjoyed impunity. They have been committing genocide since 1948 with all of the massacres, etc. And they got away with it. Why did they get away with it? On the pretext that the poor Jews had suffered from the Holocaust, etc., etc. What the world order is saying today, what happened during the Holocaust is not justification for committing genocide against another people.
yes,
And it doesn't make a difference whether you claim to be the representative of Jews worldwide and therefore believe that you have impunity and you can actually break the law all the time and get away with it. This time you are going to pay for that price. And also, if you allow me to add,
sure,
this has also created a major situation for Jews worldwide. Jews are now coming out in big numbers in America, in Europe, saying, not in my name. You cannot commit genocide in my name. I, as a Jew, do not condone genocide.
yes,
And this is extremely important because this dismantles the lie that Israel is the representative of Jews. Israel is the Jewish state that protects Jews. On the contrary, Jews are coming out and saying, no, Israel is harming us as Jews. And Zionism is a form of supremacist racism. Supremacist ideology is exactly what the Nazi ideology was. Supremacist ideology is exactly what fascism is. And therefore, when Zionism is equated with the Nazis and the fascists, then this is the end of what Israel can get away with. And we are now talking about a whole new page in the struggle of the Palestinian people because of the achievement that has been achieved in Lahai.
absolutely. Right. Now, let me ask you, Mr. Ramzy, the court ruling has also stated that Israel must take measures to improve the humanitarian situation for Palestinian civilians in the enclave. How do you see the importance of this provision by the ICJ, and what needs to be done in order to implement it on the ground? Who's responsible to make sure that this ruling is implemented?
This is extremely important because what the court is doing is debunking Israel's claim at the court when the Israel defense team came out and they said, well, we have nothing to do with that. This is an issue between Egypt and the Gazans, as if they have absolutely nothing to do with the border. And what the court basically did by doing this, by taking out this specific ruling, is saying, no, we don't buy your story. You are responsible for the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and you will allow, without impeding any efforts at the borders, you will allow all of these goods to enter immediately. And this is and therefore all of the ridiculous stories that were thrown at the court by the Israeli defense team have been rejected by the court. And this is extremely important because Israel is used to lying and getting away with it. This time it didn't happen. The court was aware.
Right. Let me ask you about next steps. What happens now? Israel is now required by the court to submit a report to them on the steps that it has taken to comply with the orders within 1 month of the ruling. Then the court will examine in detail the merits of this case. And this process can actually take years. How do you see the speed at which the process has already started, in your opinion, Mr. Ramzy?
I think it is excellent because usually the court would demand, or in the past the court had demanded a report in 3 months. This time the court has dealt with the situation as more urgent, and therefore they're demanding a report in 1 month. But it's not just Israel that is submitting the report. Every nation can now submit reports saying that Israel is not abiding by the rulings. Starting with South Africa that launched the case at the ICJ, but also other nations. They can come and say, the court ruled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here is evidence that Israel did not abide by the rulings. And therefore, Israel is in trouble. And this is not the only report that is going to be demanded of Israel. There will be a periodical process. But Israel is in trouble on so many fronts now because, as you know, NG, 600 lawyers started the case at the ICC, the International Criminal Court. The ruling of the ICJ empowers those 600 lawyers in a very big way because the ICC had rejected so many cases in the past against Israel, demanding that the ICC start investigating war crimes. But the ICC has ignored these demands and has not started one investigation of war crimes. And but now, since Israel is going to court for genocide, the ICC can no longer ignore. There is much more pressure on the ICC to accept these cases and to actually investigate them. And so there is that problem. Now with the ICC, with the criminal court, the difference between the ICJ and the ICC is that the ICC will go after individuals. So the ICJ has demanded in its rulings that people who are individuals who are calling for genocide should be stopped, and they should also be punished. Now, that ruling is going to be used by those who are raising cases with the ICC, saying that there is a ruling by the International Court of Justice that these people need to be punished. Who is inciting genocide, NG? You're talking about the president of Israel, Herzog. He is on record calling for genocide. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is on record. Ben Gvir is on record. Smotrich is on record.
The defense minister as well.
Gallant, who is the Minister of Defense, is on record. Now, these people can all be sued at the ICC under the banner of the ruling of the ICJ. Because if the ICJ says that those who incite genocide must be punished, then the ICC has to investigate those who incite genocide. There is a court ruling, and the ICJ is the highest court of the United Nations, or the highest court in the world.
Indeed. Right. Let me ask you now, Mr. Ramzy, whilst the International Court of Justice's decisions are final, they're also without appeal. Is that correct? They cannot be appealed.
No, it cannot be appealed. Cannot be appealed at all. Yes. There is no process for appeal on this issue.
On this ruling, right. But now my question to you, how can the decisions be enforced? Because the court itself doesn't have a direct way of enforcing them. Is that correct as well?
That is correct 100%. The way that they would be enforced is for the case to go to the Security Council.
Right.
Now, what all of the Arab group at the United Nations has met already at the UN, and they have informed South Africa that they are in full support of the ruling, and that they are there to work with South Africa to ensure the implementation of the ruling. Now, the Arabs have, the representative of the Arabs at the Security Council right now is Algeria. So Algeria will be representing the Arab voice at the Security Council, and Algeria has already demanded a special meeting in order to discuss the enforcement of the rulings of the ICJ at the Security Council. Now, what is expected, or if we look at history and similar cases in the past, despite the fact that there is no such similar case, the United States would most likely be waiting with a veto. But that would be so embarrassing. It would be so embarrassing for the United States to actually veto the rulings of the International Court of Justice. It is no longer vetoing the ruling of the vast majority of countries and states. They would be vetoing the rulings of the highest level law court in the world. So this would be extremely embarrassing for the United States. The United States does not want to veto the rulings of, or to veto the implementation of the rulings of the International Court of Justice. Now, even if there is such a veto, and Israel gets away with it at the level of the Security Council, that is supposed to be not only monitoring the implementation of the rulings of the ICJ, but also enforcing them. Enforcing them through taking action against the country that does not enforce the rulings or does not implement them. Now, because of the ruling, there are two different things that may happen, not at the Security Council, but at the General Assembly level. One of them, the General Assembly has the power to freeze the membership of Israel or even kick Israel out of the United Nations system. What does this mean? Israel would no longer be a member of UNESCO. Israel would no longer be a member of any of the organizations of the United Nations. And therefore, it would be declared a pariah state. And that would put Israel in a very bad situation at the international level, and they will pay a very big price. Because UN organizations they are extremely important for states. So that would be a great problem for Israel. And what are we talking about? We are talking about the United Nations General Assembly, where historically the vast majority of countries in the world who are there are pro-Palestine. They see that Israel is an occupying force. They see that Israel is wrong. But now they have a weapon. They have the rulings of the ICJ. And therefore, an act like this would be devastating to Israel and its project. The other thing that they can do is to recognize Palestine as a full state, because Palestine today in the United Nations is not a full state, and full states are states that are protected by law and cannot be destroyed, removed, etc. So the project that Israel has of transferring the Palestinians out of the state onto other countries, or killing them and murdering them, or making life so unbearable inside of Gaza that people would voluntarily leave and immigrate to other countries, etc. That project, which Israel is still trying to implement, would be finished if Palestine is recognized as a full state rather than as a monitoring state, just like the Vatican is right now.
Right. I'm afraid we'll have to leave it at there, but I'd like to thank you very, very much, Mr. Ramzy Khoury, our journalist and our guest for this afternoon. Thank you very much, sir, for your time and all your insight.